Hey kids, Mr. Mooney here in the subway, waiting on the A train. And I thought, what better time to make a video about economic systems? So, let's do a little history here. There are three types of economic systems. There is a traditional system, which was about 100 years ago, where people just did what their ancestors did, their fathers did. Right? Your father was a blacksmith, you were a blacksmith. Father was a farmer, you were a farmer. Right? That was traditional. As profit and incentive came into society, we moved to a capitalist system, which we refer to as the market system. Free market, right? So that happens. That's working until we start to exploit the workers, exploit the consumers, and then communism comes as a response to the exploitations of capitalism. And we know how communism / command worked for us, right? So on this video, we're going to focus on capitalism, the market system. All right, so while I wait for the A train, let's get to the slide. All right, guys, so I got the A train, so let's get to work. Characteristics of a market system. First characteristic is private property. People must own the goods. Think of the buffalo, right? The buffalo was almost extinct because no one owned the buffalo. No one's hopping over a fence to shoot your cow or your horse, right, on your private property. So if we have private property, that will be key to a market system. You need freedom of enterprise and choice. You should be able to do what you want, to sell the goods that you want. If people don't want to buy them, they don't buy them. Right? This is why we had in this country in the 70s a thing called the pet rock. A rock. We'll talk about it in class if you ask me, but because we had freedom of enterprise, the guy did it. He made $1 million in 1973 on a rock as a pet. Keep that in mind, okay? Then we have self-interest, right? People looking out for their own good. There needs to be competition. There needs to be markets and prices. Examples of a market system: Australia, Switzerland, and the UK. Yes, I know, you asked me. What about the US? Why didn't you list the US? Because you're going to see, based on a economic freedom index, and I'm going to show you, this is going to be the 2021 index, right? They do what is called the economic freedom index, which is a fundamental right of every human to control his or her own labor and property. In an economically free society, individuals are free to work, produce, consume, and invest in any way they please. Economically free societies, governments allow labor, capital, goods to move freely, refrain from coercion or constraint of liberty beyond the extent necessary to protect and maintain liberty itself. So based on this index, I couldn't really list the United States, because let's look at this. Let's look at economically free countries. Singapore. New Zealand. By the way, the higher the number, the better, up to 100. So you have Singapore as number 1. Number 2 is New Zealand. Number 3 is Australia. Then we get to the mostly free. We have Canada at number 9. Then the United States at 20. I can tell you that when the textbook that we tend to use sometimes in class, the United States is number 8. Okay, in the last, I guess, 15 years, the United States has dropped to 20th. All right, a little bit of that is the United States dropping, but other countries becoming more free. Japan is 23rd. Then we go to the mostly unfree: Nigeria, China, Afghanistan. All right, the one that surprises me the most here is probably Nigeria, that they're mostly unfree. I would have thought they might have been a little bit lower on this list. China makes sense. It is still a communist government. They are still forced to do what the government tells them. Afghanistan I just put here because of what's going on in the country. Okay, and then the last group we're going to look at is repressed, which makes perfect sense when you look at the three countries: Iran, Cuba, and North Korea. Now, repressed, yeah, I mean, you're going to look at two of these countries and say, communism, right? This is what happens when you have communism, that the economic freedom is totally taken away, which makes perfect sense. All right, So I just wanted to show you that when we're talking about free market systems, how free countries really are. All right, so we're going to look at two hypothetical economies, right? And what we have Presentville, and then which is growing, and we have Futureville. Futureville's curve is being pushed out at a much higher rate than Presentville. And the question that's asked up top is, what's causing one to grow faster than the other? Right? And the answer to that's going to be technology and capital goods. So advanced technology and capital goods are encouraged because it will cause economies to grow faster, people to have more. We also want to have specialization, division of labor. Everybody works on what they are good at. People may question this. I would consider myself to be a good economics teacher, so I should focus on doing economics, and I pay a guy to do my taxes because that's what he does well, right? And if I have to go to court, I hire a lawyer because they specialize in these things. All right, should a government be involved in the economy? And let's explain that. So, active but limited government. So yes, the government has to be involved in the economy somewhat, right? So we have government may be needed to alleviate market failures. Sometimes there's a failure in the market where the wages are too low for the workers and the government needs to step in to take care of this. Or people who don't buy the good are paying a cost for that good. So the government should step in and fix that problem. All right, government can increase the effectiveness of a market system. Maybe we have a good that's helping people who aren't buying it, so we should have more of that good, and the government can step in and do that. And we'll talk about that more later. What are the basic questions that every economy has to ask? Okay, there are 5 fundamental questions. If you look in some economic books, you look on the internet, they may tell you there's 3 economic questions. We've added 2 at the end of this. So the first 3 are the main questions that you will see around. First one is, what goods and services will be produced? Okay. Second one, how will the goods and services be produced? Third, who will get the goods and services, right? So those are your top 3. Those are your main 3 questions. Then from there we get to, how will the system accommodate change? And how will the system promote progress? Okay, so once we answer the first 3, then we move on to the accommodating change and promoting progress. So let's break these down one at a time. How do economies determine what will be produced? Well, what will be produced will be based on profit. Firms will produce the goods and services that create a profit. How do we know that? We know it through the dollar vote. This is the method consumers determine which goods will be produced and which products and industries survive or fail. Right? If you're buying the goods, then the good survives. Right? If I can make profit on the good, then I will continue to make it. Now, I can produce a good that everybody wants, but I'm not making profit. Eventually, I will not want to produce it. That's where the government may have to step in. Right? So that's question 1. Question 2 says, how do economies determine how will the goods be produced? The way economy will, and remember, this is all talking about free market systems, right? Characteristics of a market system, capitalism. Minimize the cost per unit by using the most effective techniques. That's through technology, getting the cheaper input prices. How do economy, who gets the output? Well, consumers with the ability and willingness to pay will get the product. The ability to pay depends on income. So the people with the money are the ones who get the output. How do economies determine how will the system change? Well, the system will change based on consumers' taste, based on technology. The price of the resources will determine things like that. Just go back. So those are the 3 things that will determine how the system changes. What people want, how we produce them, and the cost of producing them. Okay, how will the system promote progress? Technological advances, creative destruction, right? Capital accumulation. So this is something that kept coming up last year in the class. Capital accumulation, you want to put down here capital stock. the amount of goods and the amount of capital we have, the amount of tools, the amount of factories that are available to produce consumer goods. So capital accumulation is the amount of stores and factories and machines that are available. Okay, so again, put down a little note to yourself that it's capital stock. All right, so then we go to a term called the invisible hand, which came from Adam Smith's book, The Wealth of Nations, which came out in 1776. Right, one of the themes that Adam Smith talked about was the unity of private and social interest. Right, if you focus on your own interest, then society will be better off. If everybody just goes after what's good for them, the group as a whole will be better off. We can argue that. If the price is too high, people will stop buying it, and the invisible hand will push the price down to equilibrium. If the price is too low, there will be increased demand for it, and the price will be pushed up to equilibrium again. Okay, these are the virtues of the market system: efficiency and incentives, freedom. Okay, these are all the things that Adam Smith talked about. All right, and if you have those three, then the market system will flow properly. So I didn't cover it, but why do you think command systems failed? Command system is also known as communism. Some of the reasons for the demise of the command system, which was in the Soviet Union, Eastern Europe, China, right? System was a failure. There was coordination problems. Okay, here's the biggest problem. If you go and read anything with Karl Marx, he talked about the working class, the proletariat, being the ones that overthrew the system and taking control of the system. So the workers were in charge of production. That's not how communism worked in the world. Soviet Union, it was the party that took control, which then you just get somebody doing it for their own benefit again and not for the benefit of the workers. Right? And then there was the coordination problem, which meant they set output targets for all goods. It wasn't based on what people wanted or what people needed. It was based on what the government thought people should have. Right? And that caused a problem. Then there's the incentive problem. Right? There's no adjustments to surpluses or shortages. When there's a surplus, the price of the good falls. The surplus disappears. When there's a shortage, the price of the good rises, and then it disappears. Right? So all those things would work in a capitalist system, but it didn't work because we didn't have it in the communist system. Okay? And the traditional system didn't work because once there was a profit and incentive, people started to move outside of what their fathers did and tried to better themselves for that. All right? Okay, folks, that is all I have for this video. I know you're saying all. That was a 12, 13-minute video, Mr. Mooney. A little longer than we talked about. All right, well, anyway, that's your stuff. And we'll move on to the circular flow of the next video. Take care, kids.